Hello, I'm Matthew Gavidia. Today in the MJH Life Sciences Medical World News, the American Journal of Managed Care is pleased to welcome Michael S. Fitz, Assistant Dean for User Access and Diversity for the University of Alabama at Birmingham. Diagnosed at the age of 38 with Parkinson's disease, Michael serves as an advocate for the education of those with early-onset Parkinson's disease and is part of the Michael J. Fox Foundation Patient Council. Michael, glad to have you on. Can you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your work?
Yes, thank you for having me. As you already said, my name is Michael Fitz, and I am a patient advocate for the Michael J. Fox Foundation's Patient Council. As far as my full-time job, I work at the University of Alabama at Birmingham, specifically UAB Libraries, and there I serve as Assistant Dean for User Access, which is all the services that we provide for the students, staff, and faculty. As far as it is, as I got diagnosed, it was in 2011, and I was 38 years old. So I'm still working, still trying to stay positive and really show people how you can successfully live through Parkinson's disease.
And to start us off, can you share what was your initial reaction to your Parkinson diagnosis?
Yeah, I was kind of shocked. And let me just give you a little bit of background. So I knew something was going on probably at least a year or two before that. I was just kind of feeling just odd and not feeling myself. We did, me and my primary care physician performed all kind of lab work, blood work, that kind of thing, and we still couldn't determine it. So she knew about the tremor that I was having, but we didn't really think anything of it. And so finally, after all of the tests and the blood tests never came back saying anything, I was recommended to a neurologist who immediately pretty much said, "You have Parkinson's." So as you can imagine, receiving that type of news, it just really, really caught me off guard. And I was almost numb. I just can't really even describe it. And so at that time, the neurologist asked me, did I have any questions? Which, I mean, I was just so overwhelmed. I didn't know what to say or what to do or what to ask. Now that time too, I did ask him, could I take an MRI? He was like, absolutely not. That's a waste of time and a waste of money. And so come to find out, after I got rid of him, I replaced him with another doctor, just to get a second opinion, and she agreed with the first opinion. But the difference is when I spoke to her about having an MRI, she was all for it. She was like, I can understand how you would want that and just rule things out. Parkinson's, there's really no definitive test for Parkinson, let me just say that. There's just certain like symptoms, but it's not like a blood test or a urinalysis or anything like that. And so I didn't know at the time, but an MRI would not show anybody if you had Parkinson's either. But it's the way he came across in his bedside manner, what have you. But I am glad that I had an MRI because come to find out, I have a small tumor on my pituitary gland. And so I want to make sure that it's not growing and there's, been no changes. So I do have that checked every year.
And delving into the discussion on stigmas related to Parkinson's disease, it is typically perceived as being prominent in older populations. Can you discuss the process in being diagnosed as someone with early onset Parkinson's disease and some stigmas associated with that?
So basically, you're in the category of early onset if you get diagnosed at the age of 50 or, earlier. Because I think the average age for people getting Parkinson's is like 60 maybe. So once again, getting diagnosed at the age 38 was just kind of like unnerving. And then it's odd too, because frankly, you really don't see a whole lot of people of color that have gotten or have been diagnosed with Parkinson's. And so as far as like my knowledge of Parkinson's at that particular time, the only thing that I really knew about it was that Michael J. Fox had it and Muhammad Ali had it. And since I'm not a boxing champion and I, didn't go through all of that, I just got diagnosed. So a lot of the stigma that comes along with it is that people just make assumptions that you couldn't have it. It's funny when I'm in my support group meetings, a lot of people, when I'm standing around, they're like, oh, are you our speaker? And I'm like, no, I have Parkinson's. They're like, no, you're pulling our leg. And I was like, yes, I have Parkinson's. So that's kind of like the stigma, and people make assumptions that I am not living with the disease. And so I get a lot of people also saying, well, you don't look like you have Parkinson's, which I guess that's partially a compliment and maybe partially not. I don't think people necessarily know any better because there's obviously you can't really necessarily tell specifically that somebody has Parkinson's disease. And I think most people that try to diagnose or self-diagnose think that it's all about a tremor, and there's so much more than that. In fact, a lot of Parkinson's patients don't even have tremors. It just so happened that that was one of my challenges and why I ended up going to see a physician to get diagnosed.
Building on that conversation on symptoms, can you speak about the progressive nature of Parkinson disease? What are some motor or non-motor symptoms that have grown since diagnosis?
Really, to be honest with you, a lot of my symptoms that I have are cognitive. Anxiety comes with it, which I was already an anxious person. Depression comes with it. Um, those are probably the those are probably some of the most prominent ones. Because it's really, I think it makes it worse when you're depressed and you can't really get out of bed. So that's when I got diagnosed with clinical depression because I was just having such a hard time, dealing with that devastating news. So some of the motor symptoms are, of course, a tremor, um, stiffness. Um, Handwriting is really increasingly small, and you can't really read it, which is a challenge for me being in the workforce. So I could be in a meeting and I'm taking notes about what's going on. By the time I get to back to my office, I try to read my notes. I can't read them. They're illegible. They're too small, and it's just all over the place there. So some of the other challenges that I face is still working, or I feel like I've lost a lot of my executive functioning skills. So it's really hard to be an administrator when, just for instance, if I have a task to do, and the task it probably should take maybe an hour, hour and a half, or whatever, it'll take me all day to do it. And then you're kind of like looking around. It's like, well, where has the day begun? And I thought that I was spending, good amount of time on it, but it's just taking so long. So it's definitely a process in trying to get yourself trained and see how you can kind of like maneuver around it. All Parkinson's patients or people living with Parkinson's don't necessarily experience the same difficulties and challenges, but they all have their own issue. We all have our own issue and challenges.